Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So, this weekend, I had the pleasure of representing Go Rogue Industries again, a manufacturer of polymer coated lead cast bullets that I'm a big fan of. And I've used in my own training and shooting experiences, so I got a chance to rep them and go sit at a gun show. Now, a lot of things in the past I've said are still true about gun shows. There's a lot of boomers with a lot of old school guns that are cool for some of us who are collectors, but have little value for people who are in the black rifle community. And then you'll run into some boomers that actually outright freak out when they find out that you've dropped something hunting with an AR-15. So take that with a grain of salt. But let me share with you some of my experiences at this latest gun show. First off, the culture itself. Being around people in the 2A is a good thing, and it spreads the love of the sport, and it spreads the love of freedom. When you're with this crowd, these are our people if you're in the 2A community. Whether we agree on all things or not, it's kind of irrelevant at this type of thing, because it's kind of like the old school fur trappers having their rendezvous. So we get together, we get to do some horse swapping. You get to walk out with some cool stuff. You get to shoot a lot of bull, so to speak. But you also get to hear some of those old FUD lore things, and you can dispute them. I did that a couple times, or quite a bit this weekend. But more importantly, there was a knowledge exchange that happened between me and some kids. Now, their parents brought them to a gun show. Oh no, right? How did they ever make it out alive? But you know what? It makes a lot of sense. If you want kids to be safe, look at Switzerland. Switzerland starts teaching kids how to shoot at the age of 13. And this is for gun safety, as well as like the beginnings of basic shooting at a very 11 and 13 is what I heard recently. That's actually not mine. That's from one of the other gun tuber guys. I forget at the moment. He started a new channel with Tim from Military Arms Channel. So pardon me for not knowing your name yet. I'll get to know it. You got good content. But he mentioned this stuff to bring up about the Swiss. And I was thinking about it when I was talking about these kids, or meeting these kids and talking to them. Two of these kids that came by the booth were kids that were working another booth with, I believe, their mom. And they were selling spices and salsa. Now, I didn't get a chance to pick up any, and if they're listening to this, please contact me, and I will find a way to get you some cash to get some of this, because I want to try it. Mostly because there was some mixes that they had done for game meat, and I'm a hunter. Okay? But the salsa, I live in the Southwest. Why wouldn't I try somebody's new salsa, especially if they're in my wheelhouse, so to speak? If they're in the 2A, if they're willing to come market to the 2A. But I saw a lot of art there too. And I say that because the art you see is a little different. Number one, I saw a lot of knives, okay, that were custom. And when I say custom, I mean they forged the steel. They made the handles from various materials. Like some of them were plastic. Some of them were actual, or micardia, I think is what it's called. I think it's like plastic, but it's not. And then there was a lot of them that had used like stones or real wood, and they embellished the wood or the stones enough to bring out the beauty of the characteristics in it enough to give it natural beauty. That adds to the utility of whatever tool you're using to make it something that's not only beautiful but functional. And I was looking at these knives thinking about that. There's another person there who's a good friend, and I'm not plugging his product, but he was making very well crafted and very artful cutting boards. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you look on Twitter or any of the social media places, charcuterie boards are a big thing right now. You want to entertain, look cool? You missed out if you didn't go to this weekend's gun show in San Juan County, because they had some things that may have enhanced the way that looks for you people that kind of are on the richer side. But in general, these were priced very well and very utilitarian too. So you could have something that's beautiful again, but functional. But why I was asked to kind of partner with Go Rogue at Lance, full disclosure, Lance is a good friend of mine, and he supports me every way he can. He asked me to go because I know a lot about reloading like he does. And when you have a business that's predicated on reloaders and having a good name with reloaders, you don't want to give false information. So I draw on years of experience with the 2A and the reloading community specifically. And when I say this, my dad introduced me to reloading at 7. That doesn't mean I was an expert at 7. He was starting to show me what reloading was and where you have to do things and how you have to do things, because that's important in reloading. Reloading is very algorithmic. It's very time consuming if you do it right. And if there's different types of reloading. If you're doing it for shooting at competitions all the time and you're trying to save money, versus if you're trying to shoot long range precision and you want every round to count. That's also the same for hunters. But this is also where some questions kept coming up. When I said my experience, I started when I was 7. I had access to someone that had been doing it since he was in his 20s or his teens, who had learned from someone who had been doing it in his 20s and 30s until he passed away. So between my dad, my uncle, myself, and my brothers, I have a lot of access, and not just that, access to Lance, access to Dex, access to a lot of my friends at Reload. And the question came up to a brand new guy, why should I reload? Well, number one, if you're in the 2A community, I think that reloading is a good plan because you're going to learn more about what happens inside the chamber. You get to know more about the firearm you're using. But it also gives you a skill that helps make your firearm shooting experience better. Now, since I was 7, let's see, I'm 45 now. You do the math and figure out how long I've been reloading. And between the knowledge I've gotten from my dad, my uncle, and my friends, I have never had a kaboom because I've developed an algorithmic process that works for me. Okay, and it's geared towards precision shooting and precision loading. So I'm not the guy that's going to turn out 1,000 rounds of 9mm to go shoot on a competition or to go planking. However, Lance has that skill set, and Lance has the equipment to do that. And that's why he spun up Go Rogue to show off those projectiles. So the first question I was asked after that, why should I do that, was, well, you're in the 2A, this is the next step, but it also expands your knowledge. The next thing I was told, or was telling people, was, well, where do I start, was the next thing. I said, first, go get data, go get knowledge. Now, why I say this isn't something that if you do, it's just going to work the first time. You have to have some knowledge before you try it. And because this is something that could make a kaboom and alter your life in multiple ways, by that, there's some attention that needs to be made. You have to pay attention to this very well. So you're wanting to know what this stuff does. So you're wanting to know about burn rates. You want to know about, and when I say burn rates, powder burn rates. Those funky numbers correspond to burn rates, okay? I learned something this weekend about Single base versus double base powder. Single base has a shorter shelf life. Not super short, like, oh my god, I need to use this before it goes away. But its performance is based on a type of material that degrades over time, where a double base has a stabilizing effect to it, so it lasts longer. So if you're a hunter that reloads once a year, okay, because that's all you need. You've sighted in your rifle, you go out and you test your sight, you double check your sight in, and you use probably 1 or 2 rounds the whole hunt because you're that good. And yes, there are lots of hunters that pride themselves, myself included, that one shot, one kill, because I don't want the animal to suffer. So get knowledge. You want to know about the cartridge, what kind of loads it is, and what you need to do to produce the cartridge. Find a mentor. Look at some YouTube stuff. But don't look at just one source. Don't get from one source, because then what happens is you get into their methods, and if their methods aren't clean for what you need, you'll take up those bad habits. The next thing you need is a kit, a basic kit. And I'm throwing this up here because this is one of those kits I saw that I thought was pretty cool, and that could actually give you, to be truthful, this is probably the second type of kit I had. When I was trying to break into reloading, I first started out with something, and I'll show it in the next slide. This is a humble beginning, but this is a more advanced beginning than I had. But you have the basic tool set that you need to start hand loading and making cartridges that are reliable and serviceable and probably more precise than what you could get from a standard factory reload. With this type of kit, understand there's going to be some sacrifices. A balanced beam scale is going to take longer than a digital scale. It's usually more accurate, even these little beam guys, and that's how I started. But I started with an RCBS one that my dad had bought me purposely. So let's talk about those humble beginnings. I started out with this reloading kit I bought myself, and I had, between it and a small beam scale, and then later a digital scale and a set of dies, is how I started reloading. And the knowledge that I got from my dad, my uncles, and my friends. And then there was a learning curve again, because I'd always learned on how to do it with a bench press, which is the right way to do anything. It's stable. This is something that's a compromise. You will get reloads done. You'll get the same effects with that same basic kit, but it's portable. And at the time I was living in an apartment, and that's why I had one of those people that approached me and talked about reloading had said, well, I don't have the space for it. And I said, well, my first reloading kit, which I still have, I can throw into a gym bag. No joke. And it was done that way intentionally because I lived in a studio apartment and I needed to be able to put it away in a closet when I wasn't using it and pull it out when I was. Now, I've reloaded pistol. I've reloaded 9mm. I've reloaded 45 ACP. I've reloaded 270, 8mm .6, 300 Win Mag with something like this. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's the best in the world. I'm saying it can be done. And that's what you need to understand, is all those price, those big barriers of entry for cost barriers of entry, that's what I was trying to find in my head, are still there, but they're surmountable. You can get around them. So in addition to the knowledge, in addition to that, there's the cultural aspects of what we do in the 2A community. And seeing little guys come up to you and talk to you about guns, seeing ladies walk around without husbands or brothers or boyfriends who are shopping for their own needs, that's essential to the 2A because of what's happened. They realize that as much as we rely on the state, or some of us do, to take care of them, such as law enforcement, that doesn't necessarily always know that they can count on them, because geography matters in New Mexico. But also because there's not enough of them. Why aren't there enough of them? Well, look at what's happened in Memphis. Now, I'm not advocating for any more of them, to be bluntly honest, anymore. I understand the value they have for the poorer side of the community and what they do for the community in general, because of those that are anti-2A or anti-self-ownership. But seeing the events in Memphis, I have some questions to ask. Is this a symptom of the ACAB movement? Or is this a symptom of the fact that there's a bigger systemic problem with Memphis that we aren't discussing? So there's been some stuff coming out now that they have lowered the bar for entry for a cop in Memphis, specifically one that says you're a felon. You can now serve and protect your citizens. I'm not necessarily against that, but one of the police officers that will be convicted and should be convicted for the brutal act that they perpetrated on that poor guy, Tyree Nichols is his name, I believe. And may God rest his soul, and I pray for his family. Whatever happened for the cops to be involved didn't warrant 5 of them brutally beating the guy to have him die 3 weeks later. And anyone who's guarding the police so much so that they're not looking at the fact that this is a problem, or anyone who's running cover for the city of Memphis because they have some systemic problems in their police force, because if you lower the bar so much that you're allowing felons specifically convicted of this type of crime, shouldn't be cops. If you've beat the heck out of someone, there's one of these cops was an inmate was a prison guard. And I understand the transition from prison guard to a normal uniform law enforcement. They're still law enforcement. But where I have a problem with this is if you've been disciplined for brutality for being a corrections officer, why are you in the job, period? And why are you given the chance to get more exposure to the public? The more you put people like that in that mix, the more you're going to get situations like this. And it's that mentality that, well, one size fits all will fix this. It's not. And that's the same that happens in our community, the 2A community, is they come down hard on us. Well, we'll just get rid of all the guns and that'll be the fix for the problem. And anyone who's in the 2A knows, because we live in it, that that's not going to solve the problem. If anything, you've made it worse, because you're allowing the criminals who aren't going to give up their guns just to be armed. The only ones that are ever going to comply with a gun ban are the law-abiding citizens. And that's why I've always had such a problem with this mentality, is you're taking the people most willing to back you and turning them into criminals. If you look at the arm brace ban stuff that's been going on, that's a big deal. You know, the other reason why I liked going to the gun show had a lot to do with the community aspects of it, where I got to talk about the news in general. And I'm not just talking about the 2A news. But I do have one instance that I thought was pretty funny. Hey, did you hear about House Bill 9 in New Mexico? And I went, yeah, heard about House Bill 9, but that's nothing compared to House Bill 101. Oh, really? What's House Bill 101? Then that started a discussion. I had a discussion with a friend about building an accurized AK, what it would take to do that. And I still, between the both of us, I think we came to the conclusion the AR is still going to be more precise because you have access to more stuff to make it do that, without as many barriers to get to or get through for an AK. AK is minute of the man accurate, and it's plenty accurate for most people. But if you're wanting to shoot PRC type things or bench rest type things, it probably is not the gun for you. Okay? But I will definitely say, seeing two enterprising gentlemen, and if you guys were gone before I left the gun show. These guys were with their mom, I believe, in their business that they're in, is they're making spices specifically for game meat, which I want to find these guys because I want to try them because I'm a hunter. The other one had salsa. Both of them are from the same family, I believe. Both of them very dapper dressed young men, very enterprising and very social and very willing to talk to people, even adults. And that's a good aspect of what needs to happen to our society. I saw my son willing deal and bloom as a young gun guy himself. You know, he made a deal on a custom-made knife. Utility, that's something else you'll see at a gun show, is there's a lot of art there. I have another friend who had another booth there, and I didn't know he was doing this stuff in reality until I had seen it. And he's got a lot of cool cutting boards that are like charcuterie boards. So the really high-end ones that are really pretty right now that everybody's talking about on social media. And he has them. So it's beautiful and it's functional. But he also has regular utilitarian ones. Same with the knife guys. I saw knife guys take stones and natural wood and bring out the natural beauty and characteristics to integrate it into the tool to make a functional yet beautiful piece of art. That's pretty cool. And that's how when I say my community is better than your community, when I say that, I mean my 2A community. Kind of is true about my city and my state, too. I just wish that the politicians would get their head out of their butt and realize how beautiful our state is and how great it can be if they'll just stand the hell out of the way. You want to fix crime? Fix the economy first. It's the economy, stupid. Fix that and crime stats will fall. Your focus on the tool right now is glaringly obvious that you're not willing to focus on the actual issues in New Mexico. So those are my experiences at the gun show, and having some questions asked of me about reloading, because that's what I was there for mostly, and to help Lance occupy his space because he had 6 tables. So we had a full booth kicking, and I think it was profitable for him. It was definitely helpful for me to get out and work and, earn some extra cash myself as I'm getting ready for my next endeavor and my next business. So I see the value in it. You just have to get past the boomer aspects of it. There are people that are going to try to scalp you for things you can find cheaper, but be self-aware. Know that. That's how you learn. That's one of the props I got to give to Lance again, is that he brought products to the gun show that he knew would sell, but rather than offering them to other vendors so that they could buy it out and make it more expensive for the 2A in general, he made a marginal profit on it, but he was there to turn the product back to the 2A community, back to the community we serve, back to the community we belong, back to the community we love. As I said about the reloading stuff, I've been doing it for a grip. I've been there for a while. I've done it for a long time. I've had a lot of exposure to it. I've had a lot of memories to it. And if that's what gets you hooked in the 2A, that's what gets you hooked in the 2A. That's not everything that got me hooked in the 2A. My dad, weapons are part of my family. That's the best way I could put it. I won't say it's part of my religion because I don't have a religion. I have a faith. And I'm very dedicated to that faith. But you got to give chops where chops are due And this is like the old fur traders rendezvous that they'd get together, be able to cuss and discuss, and be part of the 2A community, or part of the community of fur trappers. We need that community center in every community because it propagates the 2A. Let's keep New Mexico tactical. Like, share, subscribe. Be great.